Hey guys, it's Brianna, and it is that time of the month. Not that time of the month, but the time of the month where we talk about books. Because January has ended, I wanted to talk about all the books that I read this month. And by all the books, I only read 2, but you'll see why in a minute. One of my goals for 2020 is just to read more and to read more often, and I think I did a pretty good job of achieving that goal, at least for the month of January. Basically, for me, it means to just be reading every day. Typically, what I do is I'll read before bed. Sometimes if I have like breaks in the day where I want to get off my phone or off of a screen because I do work on my laptop all day long, I will pick up my book, but for the most part I'm reading at night before bed, which actually also helps me fall asleep. So for any of you guys who are looking to improve your sleeping habits, I suggest you read like a chapter at least of a book before you go to bed. It kind of helps your brain like disconnect from staring at screens all day long and being so like go active, and like gets you more focused on something. So I think that's why it helps people fall asleep at night. But I thought a good way to kind of document for myself and also for any of you guys who are interested in finding new books to read and are just like a book nerd like I am, I figured I would make these videos every month talking about the books that I've read. So I think my goal is to probably read anywhere from 2 to 4 books a month. I know that sounds kind of ambitious considering there's like 4 weeks in a month usually, but like I said, I'm reading every day, and this week I read one of these books that I'm about to mention, in under a week. So for me, that's not as much of an ambitious goal, but if your goal is to read one book a month or one book every 2 months, that's awesome too. But let's get into the books that I've read. The first one is called Sleeping Beauties by Stephen King and Owen King. If you don't know who Stephen King is by now, then you've probably been living under a rock. In case you need a refresher, It, Cujo, Pet Sematary, hopefully some of those ring a bell for you. He is known for being sort of like a sci-fi, horror type of author. A little bit out there for some people, but I really love Stephen King. And Owen King is actually his son. They co-wrote this book together, which I think is pretty cool. There's a section in the book, I can't remember if it's at the end or at the beginning, but they talk about how they came about coming up with the idea to make this book, and it was actually Stephen's son who came up with the idea, so kind of a cool story. As you can see, this is a large book. It's over 700 pages, and that's why I only read 2 books this month, because this book is pretty big. It's basically 2 books in one, if we're talking about like 300 to 400 pages as being like the standard size for a book. This took me quite a while to read. I think it took me probably 3 weeks, because I did start it in December, but of course, like December with the holidays and everything, I wasn't reading every day. But once January kicked in, I was reading this every day, and I finished it probably, I'd say, in like 3 weeks total. I will give you a little description. I'll read the description on the back of the book, and then I can talk about what I thought about it. In a future so real and near it might be now, a mysterious pandemic is causing women everywhere to suddenly go to sleep shrouded in a cocoon-like gauze. Any attempt to awaken them is met with a reaction of feral, spectacular violence, and while they sleep, the women go to another place, a better place, where harmony prevails and conflict is rare. But there is only one, the enigmatic Eve Black, who is immune to the blessing or curse of the sleeping disease. Is Eve a medical anomaly to be studied, or a demon that must be slain? Meanwhile, the men, abandoned, left to their increasingly primal urges, are dividing into warring factions. Some of them want to kill Eve, and some want to save her, even as others rise up and exploit the chaos to wreak their own vengeance on new enemies in this brutal, suddenly all-male world. I loved this book. Of course, it's fiction. It's Stephen King. I'm pretty sure everything that he writes is fiction, but it's not so sci-fi heavy that if you're not really interested in that kind of thing, that you wouldn't like it, if that makes sense. The things that I liked about this book mostly were the constant switches in perspective. So it's kind of showing what would happen if all of the women in the world fell asleep and men were just left to kind of figure out what to do to fix the problem. And so you're getting perspectives from all different types of people, and you're also getting perspectives from the women who are trying desperately to stay awake, because it's only when they fall asleep that they don't wake up. So if they just stay awake, they'll be fine. And you can kind of imagine some of the lengths that people will go to stay awake, beginning with coffee and ending with more extreme measures. Again, I'm sure you can imagine, but I won't give anything away. Gotta read it. So there's perspectives from like a female sheriff and a women's prison and a trailer full of drug addicts and all these different kinds of people that are dealing with this problem in completely different ways. I think that's one of the reasons I was able to get through this very long book in a pretty short period of time, because there's so many switches in perspective that you never get bored, really. It's always kind of keeping you on your toes with all of the different people that you're hearing from. If I was going to rate this book out of 5 stars, I think I would give it 5 stars. I really enjoyed this book. I can't really think of anything that I disliked about this book, to be quite honest. I guess the only thing that I could say that maybe some people would dislike is the length of it. Personally, I didn't mind that, so that's why I'm giving it 5 stars. Some people might rate it lower just because it is such a long book. People that I would recommend this book to include people who enjoy a longer read, people who like books that switch perspectives, people who enjoy a mystery, and also people who are looking to get into Stephen King or want to try reading a sci-fi book, but it's not necessarily something they've been interested in the past, or they're just kind of new to it. And the reason I say that is because this is a very tame Stephen King book when it comes to like the sci-fi, otherworldly aspect of it. Essentially, the only thing that has changed in the world as we know it in this book is that when women fall asleep, they don't wake up. And that's a very easy concept to grasp as somebody who's not really super into sci-fi kind of stuff, because it's something you could foresee happening and being real. So that's why I think this is a really good step into Stephen King or sci-fi as a genre. It's not like his Dark Tower series where literally you're in a different world, you're switching dimensions, there's creatures and people who are completely new to the universe as you know it. This book is basically the world as you know it. So I would highly suggest this book to pretty much anyone, but if you fall under any of the categories that I just listed, you should probably check out this book because I really enjoyed it. I got my copy from Target, but I will link below this book if you want to check it out. The next book that I read was actually a recommendation from my mom. Thanks, Mom. It is called The Lying Game by Ruth Ware. Now, this is definitely a mystery novel. For people who kind of like murder mystery type of stuff, this is a really good book. Ruth Ware is really popular for her book The Woman in Cabin 10, which I have not read. I believe that's like one of her most famous books, so if you've heard of that book, this is the same author. This book weirdly does not have a description on the book, so I'm going to see if I can Google a description of this. I think I found the proper description of this book. So it is called The Lying Game, and the description says, "It isn't a game when somebody dies. 4 friends, 1 promise, but someone isn't telling the truth. The text message arrives in the small hours of the morning. I need you. Issa drops everything, takes her baby daughter, and heads straight to Salton. She spent the most significant days of her life at boarding school in the marshes there, days which still cast their shadow over her. Issa and her 3 best friends used to play the lying game, competing to convince people of outrageous stories. Now, after 17 years of hiding the truth, something terrible has been found on the beach. The friends' darkest secret is about to come to light." I really enjoyed this book. Again, another fiction novel. That's usually what I tend to read. This one is 422 pages, so pretty standard, and it's very small, so it's a very quick 422 pages. This is the book that took me less than a week to read. It was one of those super quick chapter books that you can just get through really fast. I think I would have to rate this book at like a 4.5 out of 5 stars, just because there are a lot of twists, I would say, in this novel. And a few of them I kind of picked up on before the like wow moment where it was like revealed. So I guess that's the only thing I didn't like about the book, was that they gave away too many hints too early about what happens at the end. But it still was a really awesome book, and I mean I read it in less than a week, so I did really enjoy it. I would recommend this book to somebody who's looking for something that's a quick read, something that they will pick up and not want to put down, because that's how I felt when I was reading this book. It's one of those books where you're just like, oh, I'll just read 10 pages, and then you're like, oh, just one more chapter, and you just keep reading. I would also recommend this book to people who enjoy mysteries, especially murder mysteries, books that are like slightly horror creepy, but definitely realistic. This is not a sci-fi novel whatsoever. It is a very realistic novel. It's also set in England, I believe. The town is called Salton. I don't think the actual town exists, but bear that in mind when you're reading this. There's a lot of like British slang and stuff that at first I kind of didn't pick up on, but then as you read, you realize that they are not in the US. So yeah, overall I would say I would give this book a 4.5, and that leads me to the book that I'm gonna start out February with. I figured I'd give you guys like a little sneak peek. And it is another book by Ruth Ware. As you can see, I already started it. It is called The Death of Mrs. Westaway. another book that my mom recommended to me, and we had it at the house, so I figured I would read this next. So that should give you an indication of how much I like the last book, because I'm reading another book by the same author right after it. So this will be the first book that I will read in February, and I will give you guys my thoughts in my next book review video. Let me know in the comments below if you enjoyed this video, if you want to see more of these, especially because I do weekly vlogs, but I mentioned this in some of my vlogs that sometimes I think people who watch the vlogs don't care about books, and people who care about books sometimes probably don't care about the vlog. So I figured I would separate the two, and because I feel like I have a lot to say usually about the books that I'm reading, I figured I would just make it a whole separate video. So if you enjoyed this, let me know. Make sure you like the video and leave a comment below, and let me know what books you read this month or what books you're looking forward to reading soon. I can always use a good recommendation. Out of these two books, if I was gonna choose a favorite, I would have to go with this one. But again, this is a really great book, especially for somebody who's looking for a quicker read, one of those can't put it down books. Check out this. But if you're looking for a longer read that's a little more in-depth, I would check out this one. That's all I have for this video, and I hope you enjoyed it, and happy reading. Talk to you guys later. Bye. We're done.